All right, I guess we'll just go ahead and start on. We've got some presentations tonight. Um, Joe, would you like to start us out, sir?
Yeah, I will do this, and let me bring up, I'm going to share my screen out here. All right, well, we're going to get started, and looks like we just got a great crowd tonight, and so pleased. And so my presentation, let me hang on, there we go, tonight is titled, "It's There, You Spherical Bastard, You Just Don't See It, The Life of Astronomer Fritz Zwicky." Now, if you're not familiar with Fritz Zwicky, the title might be a little bit surprising to you. Hopefully it's not shocking to anyone. But I think you're going to see as we learn about Dr. Fritz Zwicky tonight, the title matches the man perfectly. You'll see the last name is spelled Z-W-I-C-K-Y. Now, just, for good old Arkansas speak, we would know this man. He'd just be good old Doc Fritz Zwicky. But Zwicky is German, and the correct pronunciation, the Z has a TS sound. So you'll hear me at least try to pronounce it correctly, which is Zwicky. So Dr. Fritz Zwicky. So let's learn a little bit about the man. So he was born February 14th, 1898 at Varna, Bulgaria. His father's first name was Fridolin, and his father was a Swiss native and very prominent businessman. The family was very well known in Europe. And his father also served as a Norwegian consul between 1906 to 1933 while living in Varna. His mother was named Franziska, and she was a Czech native. And because his father was a Swiss native, that made Fritz Zwicky a Swiss native. And he actually, that caused him issues, and he never became a US citizen, remained a Swiss citizen, and as we'll see later in the presentation, decades down the road, that actually causes some issues. So at the age of 6, he was sent to live with his grandparents in Switzerland. He was sent back home, and he begins his schooling towards an eventual career in commerce. Now, I can imagine his father was probably pretty proud of that. Here my son is following in my footsteps. Just like dad, he's going to be a businessman. But at an early age, he really kind of develops an interest in math and physics. And to say he was good at math and physics is a big understatement, I think. But he just had no interest in going into commerce, going into business. So he kind of changes directions, and he starts pursuing an advanced education in mathematics and experimental physics. Matter of fact, when he was going to school in Switzerland, he claims that early in his studies that he took 2 classes under Albert Einstein. Now, there are those that kind of dispute that. I have no reason not to believe that. Albert Einstein was teaching in Switzerland at the time. He goes on, as we'll see later, in the United States. He claims to be the best student, or one of the best students that Einstein ever produced. He was known when he came over to the United States as Einstein's star pupil. I and a lot of other people in my research think that was a bit of a stretch, but I believe he probably took some classes under Albert Einstein. And surely he met the man many times and throughout his career. So he goes on and he graduates from the Swiss Federal Polytechnic Institute in Zurich, Switzerland. And his PhD thesis was on ionic crystals. In kind of basic terms, that's just sort of the applications of quantum mechanics on crystals. So what's interesting at this point is astronomy is nowhere in the picture, all right? He just, it's quantum mechanics, it's work with crystals. It's what the man did his PhD, honestly, man, still a very young man, still kind of a kid, I would say. And anyway, he goes on, and after graduating, and he works as a scientific assistant at the Polytechnic Institute in Zurich until 1925. All right. So he immigrates to the United States in 1925 on a Rockefeller International Fellowship. And the Rockefeller Foundation in New York recognizes the importance of quantum mechanics as well as other sciences. And so they're trying to bring over the best and brightest. So he gets an offer. You come over here 2 years. We're going to pay for this, and it's a good opportunity for you. So Dr. Fritz Zwicky, he asked, he said, no problem, I'd like that, it's a great opportunity, but I want to be sent somewhere with mountains. He was an avid skier, loved mountain climbing, loved hiking, which makes sense because, he grew up in Switzerland, went to school in Switzerland. So it was just, it was the thing to do. That was a big hobby. So they send him to work with Dr. Robert Millikan at Caltech and work in the area of physics and applied to crystals, sort of the same thing he got his doctorate on. So Caltech's located, for those who don't know, it's down by Pasadena in Southern California. So he gets there in the mountains around Pasadena, he calls foothills, and he's really kind of disappointed, really mad, And I can kind of understand that. That would be if you can imagine somebody from Colorado trying to really kind of talk up and get excited about what really are kind of bumps in the terrain, Mount Magazine and, and all these big mountains in Arkansas. And, no, that's not mountains. You can imagine he comes from Switzerland. Yeah, he's a little bit disappointed, but that's okay. He'll survive. So he works with Dr. Robert Millikan. And by the way, Dr. Millikan is a 1923 Nobel Prize winner for the area of physics, and specifically in the area of photon electric effect. So he works with Dr. Millikan for 2 years. All right. And again, at this point, astronomy is nowhere in the picture. So during this time, he's hiking in the San Gabriel Mountains, and this is the home of the Wilson Observatory, California. And at some point, he meets up with Edwin Hubble, and that gets his interest started in astronomy. So he meets his requirements, the 2 years for the fellowship, and then he changes studies. He wants to start studying galaxies. So it's obvious Edwin Hubble had more than just a small effect on the man. I mean, he's going from school, he studies all his life, he's quantum mechanics, and now he's going with galaxies. So big influence. So he starts working with Dr. Edwin Hubble at the Wilson Observatory. So it's at this time that Dr. Zwicky started to develop his own theories based on his observations. Now think about this. He's still he's new to this field. I mean, he has his PhD, but it's not in the areas of astronomy. So he starts working with Dr. Hubble, and all of a sudden he starts developing his own theories. He starts thinking outside the box. It's pretty bold. And the interesting thing was we start seeing a rub. His not getting along very well with other people kind of early. A matter of fact, he is not a believer in the theories of an expanding universe. Well, guess what? Guess who he's working with? He's working with Hubble. And what is Hubble known for? So again, we kind of start seeing a little bit of head bumping there. Not too badly at this point. So 1939, he marries Dorothy Gates, and she is the daughter of a California State Senator Egbert Gates. And what's interesting about that, and by the way, marriage doesn't last long. They married in 1932, they're divorced in 41, no kids. It's nothing, it's not like a real messy divorce or anything. It's just two people say, hey, it didn't work out. What I find interesting about this is the Gates family, they had money. They're pretty prominent. There is some connection to the Theodore Roosevelt family there, some distant cousins and things like that. And her money, a lot of it in her family's, goes to keeping the Palomar Observatory open. And this is Palomar Mountain, California. This is the observatory that is owned and run by Caltech, California Technical Institute. And without her financial support, it would have probably not survived the Great Depression. Pure speculation here. I mean, could have been, just a very, love at first sight, absolutely great. But yeah, can't help wondering there. It's sort of, well, maybe there was some other reasons for the relationship and marriage. I mean, she's kind of keeping Caltech supplied with money there. But hey, pure speculation at this point. But doesn't very last long, and that's okay. Not a bad divorce or anything. So So we get into, really kind of get into the 1930s. And I really think this is the decade. Now, Dr. Fritz Zwicky did some incredible things, some great things, as we're going to see. I think the 30s, that was his era. That's where he shined. And it starts out, and this is a big one. He's known for certainly two big things here. One of these, and if you, here we go. All right, folks, let's minimize this. Okay. So he's, one of the first things to happen is he's working with Hubble, Dr. Edwin Hubble. And they're at the Wilson Observatory. And so he looks at Dr. Hubble's observations on the Coma cluster of galaxies. And this is located in the constellation Coma Berenices. And I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he discovers an anomaly. Now he's doing his own research, but he looks at the notes and everything. Something's not right here. So he looks at the data, and the measured visible, now I'll put this in quotations here, measured visible mass of these galaxies would not allow the galaxies to remain clustered at the rate of speed they were traveling. They were moving too fast. Now I say visible. Now that doesn't necessarily mean visible in our, the spectrum that we can see. That's just at the science of that time. That means visible through the telescope that can be measured, that you can see it. They're moving too fast. So he said something, he looked at the data, and he looked at everything, left, right, upside down, everything. He said, no, there's something brand new, some additional mass yet unseen. And it is helping to keep these galaxies from flying apart. Because without this, these galaxies, they would have been gone. There's no way that the material alone, the gravitational attraction, can keep these things together. And he calls it dark matter. And he presents his findings to the Swiss Physical Institute in 1933. Now think about this. He's still very new in the field of astronomy, about 5 years at this point. And he comes up with this, this idea. I mean, kind of in a way, sort of turns, astronomy on its head, that there's this invisible force out there that we yet to be seen, it can't be really measured or seen, except for, we know that we know what keeps the galaxies together and the forces needed to keep them, everything. So he proposes this. So think about that. Think about how that would be perceived in the, the scientific world and everything. So kind of think about something like that, a claim within, our organization. I'm bored. I'm sitting at home. It's COVID. There's nothing I can do. So I'm going to go out. I'm going to do some simple, experiments in physics. So I go out to the garage and I get two large kind of heavy solid metal balls, because everyone has a box of, large metal balls in the garage, right? It's normal. Okay, sure. Grab some string, and I go up to a hill, and there's a street that goes to the top of the hill and it crests over. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one ball and put it on kind of one side of the crest, another ball on the other, so they'll roll down, one on either side of the hill, and I'm going to tie them with string. So before I cut the string, and I'm going to time this out, see how far they go and everything like that. And why not? There's nothing else to do this day. But before I cut the string, I said, something's not right. And I look and I realize, I grabbed the wrong string. Matter of fact, this is really flimsy stuff. Well, wait a second. There is no way, absolutely no way. I said, that this would hold these balls in place. That it should have snapped. These things should have been rolling down the hill, should have been in the next county by now. So I look, and it's a smooth road. There's no divots or gravel or anything holding these things in place. Check out the balls and everything. No, they're perfectly round. No flat spots or anything there. So, okay, something's not right. So I go back and I test the strength of the string, and sure enough, this thing, there's no way it could have held these things together. Matter of fact, this string, it could have only held 5% of the total weight of these things. All right. So I call the manufacturer, everything, so, hey, guess what? You know what? I know exactly what's going on here. So I get excited, you know, and I email Cass. I say, guys, I've discovered something completely brand new, something never seen before, some force, something, not magic, but some force we just quite don't understand. It's making up that allows for these two balls that should have been rolling down this hill to do that. Now, think about that. What are you going to think? You know, first of all, to be like, okay, well, man, we really need to find Joe Hobby. We really got to find Joe Hobby. Maybe a few polite suggestions of, you know, doctor, some prescription medication. Yeah, I mean, the guy's like rolling balls on hills. But I would gather most of you are going to say, come on, something's going on. You know, his data is wrong. There's something else there that's known. It's just causing, you know, this thing's not working. And that's exactly some of the reaction that Dr. Fritz Zwicky got. I mean, beyond this new upstart, and this is crazy. Now he's proposing this dark matter. And it's just got to be something else. There's absolutely no way. You know, this guy's either, you know, he's crazy. He's already known for these strange ideas. You know, this guy's playing with crystals a few years ago, and he's, you know, just don't believe it. Now, but there were a few people that did believe it. And so it just, you know, it's like anything else. Remember Einstein, remember the pushback that he got. So we now know he was right. So decades later, you know, dark matter is not accepted as canon until 1974. Now think about this. This is the early 30s, 33, I believe, when he proposes this. So it's not until 74, it's kind of, you know, it's accepted as canon. And this is through the work of other particle physicists and astronomers, including Vera Rubin in 1965. And look that up, Vera Rubin, and she did this observation of the rotation of galaxies. And you'll kind of read how she ties in the existence of dark matter with the way that galaxies rotated. I want to bring her up specifically because what was interesting about this is this was a decade, and of course, the astronomy, that was still pretty well a male-dominated profession. And so I thought that was kind of cool that you have somebody, Vera Rubin, that in 1965, it was, you know, that was actually did some work on this and helped prove this. So go look her up. Very interesting there on the galaxy rotation. But 74, they, you know, it's pretty well accepted, and it is today. And most people think, you know, that, you know, there is dark matter and dark energy. And this is what they discovered. Two things here. We have dark matter that makes up 27% of our known universe. And that's the force that kind of keeps things together. And you have dark energy, which kind of like pushes or expands things out. And when you get to talking about the expansion of the universe, you know, dark energy comes in there. And that leaves 5%, 5% of what we can see, or what we know is there. When I say see, doesn't necessarily mean in what we see with the eyes, it's what can be detected. 5% of the universe is made up of visible matter, or what can be detected. That's a lot, folks. Do you imagine the rest of it is, you know, this invisible stuff. So kind of cool. So that's what that's the big thing. As a matter of fact, he is known as the father of dark matter. And think about this. This was like, you know, something that he came up with decades until it was accepted. So the 30s will continue. In 1934, as Zwicky and Walter Baade predict the existence of supernova. They actually coined the phrase. And what they kind of jumped ahead a little bit. What really kind of got their interest was cosmic rays. And cosmic rays were proposed. It was a man named Victor Hess in 1912. He's actually another Nobel Prize winner. A lot of smart people here. And, you know, he said, you know, he was like, hey, the cosmic rays out there. So they kind of jump ahead and they say, we think what is causing this is what we call supernovas. Now, supernovas are bigger than normal explosions, they said. These are like, you know, bigger explosion that it's more, you know, it's huge. And they said, you know, we think this is what is causing these cosmic rays. You know, that was kind of the idea. So then they go on in 1934, Zwicky and Wade, and they predict the existence of neutron stars. Now, 1934, I mean, neutrons themselves is something brand new. And again, it's one of those things of a lot of people just don't think they exist, but they're saying, no, we have these, supernova, this is what's going to happen. That's kind of the results of these supernovas. You're going to have this kind of a leftover of a supernova, neutron stars. So eventually the ideas we're going to see of supernovas was accepted, but neutron stars, I mean, we don't even really know if neutrons really exist. And you're saying that there's entire stars made up of these neutrons. Yeah, that's kind of a little far-fetched. 1935, along with Walter Bade, they lead a successful campaign to have an 18-inch Schmidt camera, and it's actually camera telescope, built and installed at the Palomar Observatory in San Diego, California, where this is the observatory that's owned by Caltech. And they do this because they need a telescope to go out and actually find these supernovas. Now, 1935, financial situation is not very good. And this telescope ends up costing $25,000. I didn't do the math, but we can imagine that $25,000 in 1935, it's probably going to, in today's terms, that's a lot more. But they successfully get this thing built. It's the first telescope to actually be installed at the Palomar Observatory. And in the work to get this thing done is Zwicky actually goes to Germany and he meets with Schmidt and to talk about designs and things like that. Schmidt designed the lens for this thing. So they get it installed. And later on, it becomes the sort of like a scout or finder scope for the 200-inch telescope. It's installed in the 40s, the Big Hale telescope that's still there in operation, I believe. And they go on to find 129 supernovas. And it's kind of interesting because as we were talking before the meeting, we're talking about telescopes, and I'm like, well, my 10-inch Smithsonian has a little finder scope and everything. And so it's kind of funny to think this big, huge 18-inch Schmidt camera telescope, it actually becomes kind of a finder scope. It's sort of, I don't know, kind of funny to me. But again, they go on to discover so many things, not only supernovas, but so many other things with this 18-inch Schmidt camera / telescope. 1937, they propose that galaxies can act as gravitational lenses and bend light, another thing. So by the late 30s, he is kind of the darling of the media. He's maybe not quite up there with Einstein and some of these others, but hey, he claims he was Einstein's one of the best students Einstein ever produced. The United States says that, hey, this guy is, one of Einstein's, favorite pupils. So he's riding high. All right. So I'm thinking, well, this guy's great, man. All these great discoveries and everything. So why haven't I heard of this man? What happened? And why I see like the spherical bastard. I see so many mention of that in my studies there. So it's like, so we're going to look a little bit about the man himself. And you see here, probably not the best picture of, the man, but, I would say that kind of like the negative side, maybe goes along with the picture. And the caption I have here is, will the real Sheldon Cooper please stand up? Now, if you're not familiar with Sheldon Cooper, if you're haven't watched the comedy series Big Bang, go watch a couple of episodes, get on YouTube, and you're going to see that there's a lot of similarities between that character and Big Bang Theory. It's about these physicists that work at Caltech, and Cooper's is kind of the quirky one. But I really think that the producers, when they were coming up with that show, I bet you they looked at Fritz Zwicky and they said, hey, we've got to create a character like this. But this man, he was extremely abrasive personality, especially with peers, and being very forgiving here. Very nasty person. He challenged Millikan on original ideas. Now remember, Millikan was the first one, when he came to the United States, he's working with this man, brought over to work with this man. And he tells Millikan, now think about it, he's just, at this point, his first job. And he tells Millikan that I've looked at your work and I know you've won Nobel Prize, but I don't think you've ever come up with an original idea. Think about that. That's pretty bold. It's like his first, kind of a real job now. He's graduated, he's in there, and you're telling this person's brought you over this. And so Millikan says, all right, young man. He says, if you think you can do better, prove it. And he says, and might be getting a quote, probably not, I think quote maybe a little bit different from what I'm saying here, but pretty well. Anyway, he said pretty much that he said, I can come up with an original idea every 2 years and I can prove it and I can do the papers on it. And he said, I'm that good. A little cocky, huh? He's known for dominating the partnership with Walter Bade, including intimidation. Now, remember, Bade he's actually a German astronomer. And he was the one that was working with him at Wilson Observatory. And, they come up with, the ideas about these supernovas. And matter of fact, later on during World War II, he calls Bade a Nazi. Now, Bade is kind of a low-key person. He walks with a limp. He has a stuttering problem. He is very, he's not very aggressive, intimidating, or whatever in the least. Nothing that would provoke this. Because Bade, and the reason for that, one of the reasons is because in World War II, Bade was very slow to renounce his German citizenship and become a U.S. citizen. Nice guy, huh? He's a maverick. He was not afraid to go outside the traditional thinking of the day, and he was not afraid of insulting those who did not agree with his thinking. He's known for accosting physics students at Caltech that he did not know and asking them, who the hell are you? And folks, I can't help but thinking how many students may have changed their major after that happened. I mean, that's, going to school and it's a pretty tough environment anyway. And you've got this professor that's coming up grabbing you and who the hell are you? That's, I think I'll look at English or something else, I'm not, got to get out of here. So push-up contest, this man, and I mean, he had the physical build, he was a mountain climber and a skier and everything, but he would get in these, these push-up contests, the student union, and challenge these other physicists to push-up contest and just say, hey, look at me, I'm stronger and better than any other physicist. You do one-handed push-ups is what he was known for. He would get up and interrupt lecturers telling the speaker the problem they were talking about had already been solved and he had done it himself. Now imagine this, a lecture hall or classroom, and you have a speaker and he gets up and he gets in the speaker's face and just basically said, you're wrong, it's been solved, buddy. I know this stuff, okay? Again, this is Dr. Fritz Zwicky. He was banned from using the telescope at the Palomar Observatory because of an argument with astronomer Alan Sandage, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. One of his more famous insults, now, and here, this is the reason I got the title, is spherical bastards. And he explained, now, and this was, this was just one person. This was like this is one of his favorite insults. And by the way, this is one of their nicer ones. And we'll just say that he also used a lot of very colorful words in the English language, probably German too. But in any case, spherical bastards explaining because they are bastards no matter which way you look at them. I thought that, I mean, it's insulting, but it is kind of funny, but hey. And I think, no doubt, the reason he is so obscure in the realm of general public today, Einstein's a household name. A lot of people don't have to necessarily be interested in astronomy to know the name Hubble. But I think it's really how he treated his peers. He ticked off so many people that when he was gone, when he passed away, there was absolutely no way anyone was going to put this guy up in a pedestal. And, quite frankly, he was probably hoping this guy would be forgotten. Very sad thing considering what he did. So at this point in the research, I'm thinking, my God, this guy, what do you say? And very smart man, but then I saw a different side of him. And it's really interesting. I mean, it's like a complete flip. And some of the good things he did. After World War II, he collects and donates books on astronomy and other sciences to sends them to war-torn libraries in Europe. And we're not talking a few, like a few boxes. We're talking tons of books go to this library. Now, for the most part, he did use department funds to purchase them. He did get some criticism for that when when you are the physicist, it's your department. I guess you can do that. He's very involved with the charitable institute, the Pestalozzi Foundation of America, and the support of orphanages. And you can imagine, especially after World War II, the number of orphanages, and it was more than just sending a check or writing a nice letter. I mean, he was involved with this organization, did a lot for him. Second marriage, a dedicated family man. They had 3 children. He's married until he passes away. He's very liked by his staff, which is okay. I mean, I've read several things that said his staff really liked him. He was liked by many students. So that was to me, it was a little confusing, but maybe when he accosted them and said, "Who the hell are you?" maybe he chucked him on the shoulder and laughed and he knew he was joking, but there are a lot of students that actually liked the man. He was an outspoken critic in especially political posturing and conflicts in the Middle East, and really just did not like war. And we'll get into a little bit later, we'll see why sort of he was more of really kind of a man of peace. It's what that was his big thing. Interesting though, he still goes on to work for the military industrial complex. So while he was anti-war and very much, a man of peace, he didn't let it, it didn't influence his work. And we'll see that, which was kind of interesting there, that the two he kept separate. And he's quoted as saying, he believed the hope of the world lay with good people of free will who work together as needed. Now, put this in quotations, without institutions or permanent organizations. So that sort of caught me there. I mean, without institutions or permanent organizations. Interesting, but we'll see what he meant by that later. So one more thing he's really, really famous for is morphological analysis or morphological thinking, and in very, very, very basic terms. This is developed by Zwicky, and it's a way to solve multidimensional, non-quantifiable problems where traditional modeling and simulation do not function well or at all. Multidimensional, several sides to it, it's moving parts. It's non-quantifiable. You can't solve this with mathematics and logic alone. And many of the problems that are faced today, you can't do that. It's where traditional modeling doesn't work very well, if at all. So in very basic terms, I mean, this gets pretty deep, all right? But in very basic terms is you're working backwards. You start with the outcome. You look at all the components that make up that outcome and eliminating what is just not possible. And you come up with some good ideas. And the two advantages of this is, one, you miss a lot less than you would by going the other way. And it's good for generating ideas not considered before. And probably many of us have actually used this type of analysis and didn't even know it. Now, he uses this both in his work in astronomy and aerospace, but today it's commonly used not only in the sciences and engineering, but in policy analysis, political analysis, organizational development. And he actually goes on and writes a book titled Morphological Astronomy. And you can get this book. And now if you've got money to burn for $850, you can get the hardback on Amazon. I do think the softback is $150, but you can probably go out there and Google and find some things in morphological analysis. It's a little bit cheaper than that. Now, I don't think we're going to have time tonight. I was going to do kind of a short group exercise on morphological analysis. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to send everyone this weekend, I'll send you a YouTube link. And again, very basic sort of example of morphological analysis or thinking. And it's pretty cool. I think you'll like it. 1940 is the decade of the jet aircraft. 1942, Zwicky is appointed professor of astrophysics at Caltech. He is the first astrophysicist at Caltech, or what his title, astrophysicist. So he's arrived. He's a big man now. And up until that point, he was just an associate professor. So now he is an astrophysicist. 42, he assists physicist Theodore van Karman, and Karman is the director of aeronautics laboratory at Caltech. And raising capital to start a company called Aerojet Engineering. And this is used to promote research and assist the military in jet technology, and it's headquartered in Azusa, California. Now, why would that be useful in 1942? What's happening here? What is going on in the world? Okay, it's World War II. December 7th, 1941, the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor. We declare war on the Japanese. 3 days later, Germany and Italy declare war on us. And folks, if you don't know a lot about history, we were behind the curve in many areas, including technology, especially compared to Germany, who was ahead of the curve, especially in jet technology. So during World War II, they come up with a lot of concepts, inventions, and things, and this is used to help the Americans and Allies win World War II. 1943 to 1946, he's actually serves as a director of Aerojet Engineering Company, and he remains as a technical advisor until 1955. Between 1945 and 46, the war's over at this point. It's April 1945, Germany surrenders. Japan surrenders in September of 1945. So he leads teams to include Air Force personnel in the post-war Germany and Japan to conduct research, interview the scientists that were working on a lot of this technology, including jet and rocket technology. He's one of the first men to interview von Braun. John von Braun is one of the developers of the V2 rocket. He goes on the Manhattan Project, or post World War II, working on some of the nuclear, not the Manhattan Project itself. But anyway, one of the first men to actually interview this person. And he takes this technology and they take it and they basically implement it in US technology and ideas and things like that. Now, I will say this, Japan, as far as technology, wasn't a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, Germany was really the technological powerhouse. As a matter of fact, on the jets, they actually had operational jets near the end of World War II. And the only reason that they didn't win the wars because at that time they were pretty much decimated. But if they had developed this any earlier, the history could have really gone a different way. So, and I think this is really one of the things that sort of changed his thinking as far as anti-war. Can you imagine after World War II, you're one of the first ones into Germany just a few weeks after they surrendered, and the same for Japan. As a matter of fact, he was actually one of the first people from the United States to visit Hiroshima. That's where the atomic bomb was dropped. So, to me, that was probably, if not the big influence, one of the big influences on him becoming very anti-war. But yeah, he still goes on and he works, developing weapons and technology and stuff. So kind of interesting there. 1947, he marries Anna Marguerite Zucker, and then you have that Z, the TS sound, and hopefully I'm not butchering that too bad. German is not very good. They have 3 daughters. It's a very good marriage. 1949, he is awarded the United States Medal of Freedom. This is the highest award that a civilian can get. I mean, this is very special. He is the first foreign national to be given this award. Remember, he's still a Swiss citizen. He is not a citizen of the United States. And he's given this award for all the things that he's done to help the United States through this really, really tough decade of the 1940s. All right, some of the post-war experiments and achievements in aerospace that he did. He used German technology, V2 rockets, and in the late 40s, he attempted to be the first American, well, again, he wasn't a citizen, but first person, we should say, that was able to launch artificial satellites into space. So this German V2 rocket, he puts an explosive charge of these aluminum balls, he sends it up into the atmosphere, and the V2 rocket could not get to a height where it would be considered in orbit or in space. So he had this charge up in the nose, and what was supposed to happen is the rocket would reach its maximum height. This charge would explode and would send these aluminum balls into orbit. And hey, again, another achievement. It didn't work. Something went wrong with the charge. It went down. They kind of tried to save face and said, well, we got some great data and some information and everything. It wasn't a total loss. He goes on. He invents the JATO engine. This is actually during World War II. JATO standing for Jet Assisted Takeoff. And you see here in the background screen, you see a C-130. This is Fat Albert, and it flies with the Navy Blue Angel team. And I think the Navy has a different designation for it. I don't think they call it a C-130. But it's the Navy version of the big 4-engine cargo planes we see around here. And you see this flame shooting out kind of the side here, these rockets and everything. And that's actually, these are attached to the aircraft. They're mobile. And they give the aircraft an extra boost, jet assisted takeoff. And where this is useful is where, you have a very short runway and maybe a plane that's carrying, some weight there, and they don't have the runway space. These are used to get off the ground in a very short distance. He invents the first underwater jet engine. And a matter of fact, over 50 patented devices are under his name. And he really lays the groundwork for major aerospace advancements, including the development of the Saturn V rocket. Now, he didn't work or develop the Saturn V rocket. He wasn't specifically, connected to that project, but some of the work he and his team did, like the Saturn V rocket and some of the technology we use today wouldn't have happened without him laying the groundwork. And of course, the Saturn V rocket, for those who don't know, that's the rocket that took the astronauts to the moon, the big rocket there. And he's known as the father of the modern jet. So he's the father of dark matter, father of the modern jet. And in my personal opinion, I think maybe a little bit of a stretch, say he's the father of the modern jet. Maybe he's one of the family members, okay? But again, he's given that title, and certainly don't want to say the man didn't deserve maybe to be within a family. Okay, father, I don't know. All right, welcome to the 1950s, and this one I've titled "Paranoia and Government Leadership Are a Bad Combination." Probably no argument there. Early 1950s, it's the decade of the communists are hiding under your bed. They're hiding in the refrigerator. The neighbors that move next door, they've got an accent. They're probably communists too. It's the Red Scare of the 1950s. So remember when we talked about that he remained a Swiss citizen, and he had no interest in giving up his Swiss citizenship. And 1955, it's like he just doesn't want to become a Swiss citizen. And so that puts him on the McCarthyism radar, the Red Scare radar. And he's given an ultimatum. He's like, here's the deal. You become a US citizen, or we're revoking your top secret clearance. Think about this. 6 years before, 5.5 years before, he's been given the United States Medal of Freedom for helping the United States and allies win World War II, to save democracy, do his part. 1955, this guy's like, oh, no, he's won't give us a Swiss citizen, don't become a US citizen, he's out. So going to revoke his code. He's not going to do it. And he jokes, one of the jokes, he says, well, what if I wanted to become, the president of Switzerland one day? I can't give this up and everything. But that was it, man. I said, no, you're out. You're gone. They revoke his clearance in 1955, and he's forced to quit Aerojet. He can't work there. They're doing, they're doing all these things, many of them top secret for the government. He's out. And the knowledge and leadership is, he's leading many of these projects. When he's pulled a lot of this knowledge, everything, these ideas in development, they're gone, they're lost. And the good thing is, at least much of the mainstream press speaks against this. They recognize that, this guy is really, is the way he's being treated and some of the ideas that are lost. And kind of subject, kind of outside the scope of this discussion, but I will say, and certainly don't feel sorry for Zwicky on a personal level, or because he was kind of a nasty guy, but just to think of all the things, all the things that could have been, all these great ideas that he had, all these things they're working on, and thousands of people that were victims of this era. And, we're still feeling the fallout from that, And I think it's kind of funny too. It's like, become a US citizen or you're out. And I kind of think, well, if I was a subversive, a spy, I wanted to do something bad, and okay, fine, I'll become a US citizen. That's not going to change my mind. Different way of thinking. So 1955, he puts it out. And again, it goes back. Remember, I had that quote where it said, people working together without institutions. And I said, we'll talk about it a little bit later. I think this is kind of where this came from. I think at this point, the way he had been treated, he sees institutions and government as a hindrance to the, to advancement in the sharing in ideas and things like that. And I really think this is probably one of the things that does that, very sadly. So we're going to move on here. Life goes on. After 1955, he remains at Caltech and he continues to make contributions in the study of astronomy. His official retirement is 1968. And I came across a few things. I'm still, like I said, I wasn't able to do extensive research, but what I found is he wasn't really, there's a lot of indication he wasn't ready to retire in 1968. He was in this feud with Alan Sandage, who worked at the Wilson Observatory. Alan Sandage was a prodigy of Hubble, and it got heated, and it got nasty, and it got public. And Caltech basically comes to Dr. Zwicky, and he says, look, you've got to take this down a notch. Okay, you take this down a notch. I mean, this is getting out of control. And he refused to do it. So they said, great, well, guess what? You're retiring. You're out. So in 1968, he retires. Not long after that, his access to the Wilson Observatory is revoked. Now, they say it's because he's no longer an official employee of Caltech. And so therefore, it's just the normal procedure. But, I can't help but thinking there's probably other retired astronomers that they said, no problem. Maybe you're not as high on the list of getting access to telescope, but banned. No, I'm pretty sure it was a few. He continues to perform research at Caltech, still has an office there even in retirement. And he finishes a six-volume catalog containing over 40,000 objects that he has observed in himself. And this includes 29,418 galaxies. That's a lot of galaxies. 9,134 galaxy clusters, all right? That's a lot. The final version is released in 1971. And if there was any thought of forgiving this man or him asking forgiveness and, a Scrooge moment where he wakes up the next morning, he apologizes to everyone, we're all good, everyone gives hugs. That went out the window. Now, I haven't seen the actual copy, but the final release of the 6-volume catalog, supposedly in the 27 pages introduction, he settles old scores, and that includes accusing Hubble and Bade, who have passed on at this point, or they're dead, of falsifying their observations. So this guy is like, he's like, I don't care. It's like no forgiveness there, these guys. And again, this was pretty well, if there was any inkling of maybe this, kind of this guy he's retiring, he's on the downslide to try to get along with them, that's gone. And really his fault. 1972, he is awarded the Royal Astronomical Society Gold Medal. And that is a huge, huge deal for an astronomer. I mean, that's a very big thing. All right, so Dr. Fritz Zwicky passes away suddenly on February 10th, 1974 at the age of 75. Now, I came across one writing that said the cause was a heart attack. I don't have a reason not to believe that. Again, he was working up until working up to the day that he died, doing research. And so it was suddenly, there was no prolonged illness or anything. So 1974 passes away. His cremated remains are buried at Mulhouse, Switzerland. And not long after that, the Fritz Zwicky Foundation is started, and that promotes his ideas on morphological thinking and analysis. Remember, we kind of talked about that a few slides back. And his legacy, he goes on, he has an asteroid named after him. It's asteroid 1803 Zwicky. He's got a moon crater named after him. It's the Zwicky crater. And I know something about that's kind of cool. I don't know why. That's, an asteroid, that's kind of cool, a galaxy, but a moon crater. And I don't know, that's just me. But I don't know, how many people can say that? I have a moon crater named after me. One of the galaxies he discovered, the galaxy I is Zwicky 18. And it's a dwarf galaxy, and that was named after him. And if you're interested in finding that, it's located in the constellation Ursa Major. It's roughly 59 million light years away from Earth. And if you want the coordinates, just shoot me an email and I'll send you the coordinates to that. Again, he's considered ahead of his time and a visionary by modern, astronomers and students. I mean, some of these things that he predicted, especially, that his shining decade, we've come to accept as canon, right? But Sadly, he remains very obscure in the general public. I'll be honest with you. I had never heard of the man. And when I was looking for astronomers to do a program on, it was the name. It really just caught my eye. I mean, Fritz Zwicky. But then I start reading this stuff, and of course, I'm like, why the heck did this man? Why is he not more famous? Well, now you know. The guy was just not a very nice person. And so they made sure he's going to be forgotten. So if you're interested, if you want to learn more about this man, there is a book, Zwicky, The Outcast Genius Who Unmasked the Universe by John Johnson Jr. By the way, these are all available on Amazon. I believe this one is actually, they have a digital version if you're interested. I'm not sure about these others. I don't think the others are in a digital form. But Morphological Astronomy by Fritz Zwicky. If you've got the money to burn, go for it if you want to do this. My suggestion, if you want to learn about morphological analysis and astronomy without reading the book, I mean, maybe the man goes into some basics and works his way up, but I would probably look for some other sources. And like I said, I'll send you that YouTube link. It kind of gives a very sort of a basic overview of what that is. The Catalog of Galaxies and Galaxy Clusters. Remember, this is a 6-volume catalog with the famous 27-page introduction, or they're infamous. Again, that's out there, and that's just a mere $950 if you're interested in getting the hardback version. It's available. And Discovery, Invention, and Research Through the Morphological Approach by Fritz Zwicky. Another book on morphological analysis, but again, without reading the book, I'm assuming that it's if you've never dove into that type of thinking, that kind of approach before, I would probably start with something else. All right. So at this stage, I'm going to ask, are there any questions or anything more you'd like to know about Dr. Fritz Zwicky? No?
That was a great presentation. Thank you, Joe.
All right, great. Well, glad you enjoyed it.
Any question, folks?
No, I was just going to say, I looked up the present value of $25,000. Today it'd be just under $500,000.
A lot of money.
And a lot of money.
Like I said, you're in the middle of the Great Depression, but again, I had no proof. But again, you can't help wonder if maybe there was some help there with the first marriage. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money if you think about that. Thank you for doing that. Anyone else?
Yeah, didn't he work with Richard Feynman?
He knew Richard Feynman. He worked a little bit with Richard Feynman. And he came came across some of the big names in astronomy. He met Einstein. There's pictures of him with Einstein and some of the others. But again, it could have been something I missed on the research as far as like the depth that he worked with Feynman on. So certainly knew the man. All right. Any other questions? I think the lesson for this too, folks, is it kind of pays to be nice, unless you just absolutely want to be forgiven, because I mean, you can do some great things in this life, but I mean, if you're kind of just this nasty old, this kind of this cranky old man and just kind of, just doesn't get along with folks, yeah, you see kind of what happens there. So, all right.
Well, thank you, Joe. And if there's no more questions, we're going to move on. And Darcy, I think you've got a presentation for us, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Mine's very low tech, and I like gadgets, so I'm going to share a couple of the gadgets that I have with you. There was an article in Sky and Telescope magazine a couple of years ago concluded that dim amber light is better for your night vision than red light. And red light is good for photographic emulsions, but they were saying that amber light is better for people's eyes. So I got a couple of different kinds of amber lights. And this one is a little one that fits on top of a 9-volt battery. It's got a high and a low setting. And the other one is called a book light. It's got a clip on one end, a flex neck, and it's rechargeable. You use your phone charger on it. And it's also a dimmable light. And it'll go down to very low. And each one of these costs about $12. And that's my gadgets for tonight. So I'll send the link if anybody wants to know where to get them. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, kind of. Where did you get those? What's Amazon or where would?
Book light comes from Amazon, and the little one that fits on the flashlight comes from a place called lowbluelights.com.
Okay,
I'll send a link.
good deal. Thank you.
Darcy, I'm glad to see you say that because I had run across an article that I don't know that it was Sky and Telescope, but that had done a fairly good little analysis on that. And the pitch is that the red light is, if you're trying to read maps and things like that, it's very difficult to actually see with in terms of fine detail like lettering, reading, and maps, charts, and so forth. And amber light will let you see, but at the same time, it's more efficient for your eye, but at the same time doesn't affect your night vision. And yet I've never seen that anywhere else. And it's hard to come up with. I actually looked around, so I'm glad you found some amber lights. I want to try that.
I can read a star chart better with them, and I don't stumble around as much when I'm walking with an amber light.
I guess we're going to wrap it up for this evening. Thank you all very much. Thank you once again to all the presenters tonight. Y'all were wonderful. Yes, we're all going to have to step up the game so we can get up there with Joe on these presentations. And thank you all once again.